Hi guys, thank you so much for attending and being with us towards the end of the day, especially on the second day as well. And I'm thrilled to see the girls that have turned up with sparkling wine or champagne. It's fizz generally. I'm really impressed by that.
Where's ours?
But anyway, thanks so much for attending. My name's Alexis, this is Paul. And we're putting a slightly different spin on this show to probably what you've seen elsewhere, because we're actually going to bring sustainability into the mix and the role that that plays in the e-commerce world. So we marketers by career, we've got about half a century's worth of experience between us. But actually, it was about 5 years ago that we dived into the sustainability space, and we created this framework. I won't give you the full history of ourselves, but we created this framework called the Sustainable Marketing Compass, which basically is a guide on how you embed sustainability into your marketing, from branding and strategy right through to tactics, governance, performance. And we created this because we realized that there were lots of amazing things happening, but there was in this space, but there were only pockets, and there was like so many marketers were like, but how do we actually embed it the whole way through rather than just in bits and pieces? And so we created this, and we thought the only way we're going to cause mass sort of like impact is actually if we open source it. And the day we launched it on LinkedIn, it hit 750,000 people in the first 24 hours. It went absolutely mental. I don't think we were quite prepared for that. But it's brilliant, and it's now actually starting to drive change in some of the clients and partners we've worked with, including like Diageo, Eon, Asda, as well as some of the agencies like Oliver. And now we're working with education systems as well. It's like, how do we get sustainability into the marketing world across all the education institutions as well? So we do a lot, particularly with the University of Cambridge at the moment. And just because we've got our wonderful publishers here, thank you, Donna at the front, we brought out a book on this as well. So if you're interested in it at all, you can go over to Kogan Page's stand. It's on A62. And the exciting thing is, and it sounds ridiculous saying this, but we are a finalist in the Business Book of the Year Awards, which we're finding out this evening how we do. So cross some, or is it break a leg, as Paul would say?
Break a leg. We're not nervous at all.
No, not nervous. Anyway.
Right. So hi, I'm Paul, co-author and co-partner with Alexis, and I really love being here because actually I've spent my whole career in marketing like Alexis, but very much focused in digital, very much focused in digital transformation. But I started doing it 15, 20 years ago. So actually coming here today to see just how far we've got and what the innovation is doing is actually really, really exciting. And it made me realize two things. One, how old I'm getting, because just how far we've come. And it made me also get quite kind of nostalgic about where we've come from. And it reminded me of an old ad, an old film, that I'd just like to share with you to show you just how far we've come. So I'm just going to press play on this.
Peter, come take a look at this.
Mr. Daniels.
Look at this.
What's this? The numbers, they keep getting bigger and bigger.
The clicks are off the charts.
Yeah.
Yoshi, it's Walter. We're back.
I need more trees. More, please? I'll get you more trees. Hey, take a look at wood pulp.
Everything you got to wood pulp right now.
He really loves that thing.
Do you know what your marketing's doing? Over my tenure in digital transformation, we've gone from humanity exceeding 3 of the planetary boundaries to actually 6 of the planetary boundaries. And by the way, just as a little side note, with the child who was causing all that carnage in the film there, did you know that the ad tech giants that we work with on a daily basis to allow us to do our jobs will have 72 million data points on every single child in the global north by the time they are 13 years old? We have to take a step back from everything that we're doing in this industry to understand what our role is and how complicit we are in the challenges we face from a sustainable point of view. And that's the work that Alexis and I do, and that's the work that we've put into the book. We're not saying that growth is bad at all. What we're saying is it has to be balanced with our focus on the environment. It has to be focused with the way we treat people in society and individuals as well. And marketing has a huge role in that, and that starts with becoming alert to the impacts that we actually have.
So this is a diagram that kind of started with talking about the elephant in the room, but it kind of translated in the end to what other animals have trunks to explain it. So bear with us on this one. But basically, when we start to hear about how marketing has an impact and where sustainability sits in this space, where there is so much focus at the moment is the operations section. And we like to think of this as the Dumbo octopus, which for anyone's reference is about 13,000 meters. Hang on a second. How deep is the ocean? Feet, 30,000 feet down in the ocean floor, and they're about this tiny. They're really small little octopuses. So it is absolutely amazing that we are focusing operations. We're starting to look at the carbon footprint of production, of advertising. We're starting to look at carbon footprint of media. But actually, it's really a tiny part of actually where marketing currently has its impact and where it can drive the biggest change. And actually, while we're on operations, it's interesting, when Paul and I gathered all the data points together, actually marketing to date is only 1% effective at what it actually does, which is terrifying in its own right. And thank goodness it's not more effective than that, because I think we'd be in a worse situation. But if we actually flipped it on our heads, has anyone ever considered that 1% effective means 99% waste? So all of that carbon, as an example, or packaging or whatever else that goes into it.
All this.
Yeah, all of this that you see around, if we work off that sort of 1% effectiveness, 99% is waste that doesn't need to be wasted.
So that's operations. Next, as we move up, we move to a tapir, and I've been getting really good at my animals here. So it's a kind of more cow-sized animal with a trunk.
They're not cow.
I know they're not a cow, but
Pig.
Cow-sized pig. I've really got to research this properly, haven't we? But anyway, we've got a tapir, and tapir we've equated with brain print. Now, many marketers aren't aware of what brain print is. It was a phrase first coined by the World Wildlife Fund back in 1992, and it actually refers to that emotive and societal and mental impact of all the ads, all the media, all the touch points that we subject our audiences to. So if you think about it, in the global north, roughly everybody else gets between 4,000 to 10,000 media impressions a day. 72% of that is based on inadequacy marketing. So it's designed to make you compare yourself against your peers and come up wanting. That has a health and well-being impact on us. Warwick University did a 9-year study into this that actually showed that peaks in media spend correlate with a decline in customer happiness. Brainprint is also responsible for embedding expectations around our lifestyles that are wholly unsustainable but have become societal norms. So as an example, if I want to express love, I have to go and buy a rock and put it on somebody's finger. That was entirely a construct by De Beers in the post-war and post-depression in the US. And it was designed to keep prices artificially high, because guess what? Diamonds aren't rare. There's a lot of them buried in the ground. So it's designed to keep prices high, equate it with love, so that actually in a very poor and impoverished economy, people would still keep buying them. So we have to be alert to our brain print that we're subjecting the world to.
And then there's the biggest, which is the elephant in the room, the African elephant, not the Indian, the biggest of the lot. And that is behavior. What behaviors are we actually driving from a marketing perspective? What are we actually telling customers they should be doing? One of the biggest things, well, one of the saddest facts actually that really gets to me is that we make people constantly, we have no concept around what people's personal sort of situations are, and yet we keep telling them they have to keep buying more and more and more, especially around Christmas. We've made people believe that a Christmas is not a Christmas if you haven't got a stocking full of presents. And in 2022, when we went through the height of the energy crisis, 54% of individuals in the UK spent more than they could afford on presents because of the marketing we were putting out there, which increased 29% risk of suicide because people went into so much debt surrounding it. So that's the kind of behavior we're starting to think about. We're also thinking about the e-waste mountains. You know, the amount of phones that we're selling, the amount of computers that we're selling. And we keep on saying that at the end of 2 years, no, you should definitely buy a new one. And actually now we have more precious metal in landfill than we do actually in the ground at the moment because of the e-waste mountains that we're actually, well, we're creating. Then we've got fast fashion, another example. We are telling people that trends are changing now on a daily basis. It used to be seasonal. It used to be actually twice a year about 50 years ago. It said twice a year, going into like spring, summer, and then autumn, winter would be the 2 times you'd see change. And then fashion brands started to go, okay, maybe we can sell more. And it got tighter and tighter and tighter. And now Shein, that brand, now releases 10,000 new lines a day. And that's how much we're actually going through. We've actually got so much clothing on this planet that we can clothe people for 6 generations without producing another single item. And we've now got piles of clothes in the deserts that now can be seen from space, most of which have only been worn 2 or 3 times. So that is how bad the situation is becoming because we just keep on driving more and more consumption. And then if you're looking at more the sort of like the sort of ops level, you know, we're actually we've got so much digital fraud going on. 30% of media budgets to date now are prone to digital fraud. And then the one that Paul absolutely loves is the purpose disruptors, who I don't know if you know, they're quite an activist group in the agency world, worked out that our advertising is adding 32% onto every single individual's carbon footprint in the UK as we currently speak. That's the behavior that we are driving as an industry. So enough of the sad stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So I've seen a few startled faces with some of those stats, and we have a book full of them if you want to really dive into it. But actually, I suspect a lot of you have heard these sorts of doom and gloom stories before, and it's nothing new. And that's a problem, because actually most people know this. Most people know there's an environmental crisis. Most people know that there's issues in society, yet marketing carries on doing the same things. So we have to change tack. We can't carry on painting the doom and gloom picture. We've got to think in a different way. So, pop quiz. Anybody know who this chap is?
Yes, yeah.
Nearly. He did There's a Hole in My Bucket. Dear Liza, and I'm really showing my age here, aren't I? Okay. It's Harry Belafonte, who's famous singer. You did get it right. Okay, sorry. Very famous singer. Also, very, very powerful political activist. And actually, he was the person that was advising Martin Luther King on how to engage with Bobby Kennedy. And at the start of their relationship, those two weren't getting on. And actually what Harry Belafonte said to Martin Luther King was, you need to find the shared door you can both walk through. And that's becoming our mission as we move with the book. We know we've got planetary problems. We know we've got societal problems. We can't just poke fingers and throw blame at the industry. We have to work to find collaborative solutions. And that's at the heart of the compass and at the heart of our book. So we tried to think what might be some shared doorways that we could think about here today. and actually maybe send you away within the back of your mind. And there's three immediate ones that come up. Firstly, it's a bit of a stick, but legislation is coming fast and furious. If you were to print out all the environmental legislation that's hitting the world this year on pieces of A4 paper and stacked it up, it would be 10 stories high. Thinking specifically about marketing, how many of you are aware of the Green Claims Directive? A few people. You will have heard that we're not allowed to use things like carbon neutral anymore. We're not allowed to use spurious eco-labels on our products. Did you actually know that that's going to mandate that we offer sustainable delivery options? What's the point in having a sustainable product if you still get it on same-day delivery? Same-day delivery is the equivalent, by the way, of chopping down 3,000 trees, whereas waiting for 5 days is the equivalent of chopping down 5 trees. Also within that legislation is the need to communicate the right to the repair and the typical cost of repair. And you have to do this at the point of sale, physical or online. Also, you need to be putting up, we were chatting to somebody about Apple earlier, you need to be posting validated durability claims about your products. So actually, if Apple are putting up, oh, our product's only going to last a year because we want to buy you one in another year, they're going to have to communicate that at the point of sale. And finally, in terms of the consumables that sit around some of our products, you are not allowed to prompt people to buy them when they don't actually need them. You get this wrong, and it's 10% of global turnover is the fine that's heading towards your company. So actually, there's a doorway that we should all be considering in terms of environmental things. Then we need to think competitively. There's lots of things going on in the sustainable world that are quite complex, such as commitments to the United Nations sustainability goals, setting your net zero targets for carbon, actually moving from a linear economy to a circular economy. And I'm not going to bore you with the complexity of that. But they're the things that are beginning to drive innovation in industry. So we did an audit of the sports footwear industry recently, and actually the innovation space there is in the subscription services around shoes, rather than how bouncy the sole is, and how they bring circular economy into those worlds. And then we come to the customers themselves. And there's been lots spoken about the inaction gap, and people say, yes, I'll behave sustainably, and then they don't. And the reason for that is because the products we were selling, we premium priced. It's like, buy our sustainable product and we'll charge you an extra 37% for it. What did we expect was going to happen from a behavioral point of view? We're getting far better insight now on just where and when consumers will actually buy goods, and the markets are shifting. So legislation, your competitors, your customers are all beginning to address sustainability. But actually there's a far more important reason, and that's real people. Do we have to wait for these things to hit us before we change? Or are we changing because of those families and friends that you're going home to at the end of the day?
So leading on from what Paul was saying, there's actually more legislation around how you protect battery hens than how you protect the individual customer. How often do you actually consider your customers as individual people, people that you know, as Paul said? How often do you think at that level, apply that contextual care to them rather than thinking them as data points or sort of thinking them about demographically? So when we were thinking about how do we get the industry starting to think, and this is just one point on the compass, our framework, we started digging into like how do we get people moving away from thinking of individuals as just data points and starting to apply a much greater contextual care. Now the prime example of something like this is like, do people ever consider if they're trying to sell a bottle of Coke to someone, as an example, a bottle of Coca-Cola, do they ever consider whether that person is actually on a diet and desperately trying to lose weight? No, that contextual care is never applied to that person. It's just like, I know that they will give in, perhaps more easily after they've been to the gym, so I'm just going to hammer them until they give in and buy our Coca-Cola. So what we started thinking about is like, well, we're clearly not going to find it in the marketing industry, a sort of framework with with how we apply that contextual care. So a lot of the thinking that we've put behind this is like, what other industries are actually doing a lot better at this than us? And the healthcare industry is a prime example around contextual care. They have this 8-pillar approach that when someone comes in and says they're ill, they don't just ask specifically about that. They ask around. They ask about your family situation. They ask about when the activity happened, what were you doing? All these kind of things. So it's not just specifically about that. And we think that that is the kind of thing that we need to apply when we're thinking about marketing. We need to consider our customers at individual level and apply a much greater contextual care to them. So it's things like being more transparent and applying a level of education to it. What kind of environmental considerations do we need to consider about our individuals? Are they in floodplain areas, as an example? Or, are they suffering from heat stroke or something around that? The same around societal. Are they digitally illiterate? Are they lower income, and so therefore pushing them to buy more and more and more, like that suicide fact? Are we pushing them to buy more and more when actually they just can't afford it, and you're actually just driving them into debt? So this is basically an eight-layer approach that we're saying you should start to apply these kind of things when you're starting to think about customers.
Yep, and that's just one point. We have the real people section on the compass. The compass is a framework to embed sustainability, environmental, societal, and commercial performance in your marketing, starting with the UN SDGs at the start. We haven't had time to talk you through the whole compass today. We've just focused on real people because we think this industry that we're in this hall with today is very much at the front of how it treats real people. But if we've found any open doorways with you today, whether it's the real people one or legislation or competitive pressures or consumer change pressures, then here's what we'd suggest you might consider doing. First of all, get compliant. You don't want to be introducing your company to 10% of global turnover fines. Then, yes, do that work to map your operational footprint. Do all that work, that's great. But don't stop there. Start rethinking what it means to be competitive with a sustainability at the heart of that competitiveness. And that's really exciting because actually it makes marketers strategic again and not just tactical delivery agents. And then get serious on behaviors. A lot of our impact is about the behaviors we engender in society. So the automotive industry can ship as many electric cars as it wants. It will not get to net zero unless it works with us on how and when we drive. So we, as marketeers, have a huge role in that. And then finally, put real people first. So that's us. Thank you so much for spending the time with us.
Thank you very much.
We're going to be around if you want to chat.
Yeah, we're around, and find us on LinkedIn or the sustainablemarketingcompass.com. That's where you can find us if you have any more questions after this. But yes, do come over and have a chat, and thank you for staying here and enjoy your fizz, girls.